Welcome to the Taco Cast. I'm Crystal. Will is sick, and you're the audience. So today, Will is out. He is not feeling good. However, I'm still conscripting him into doing the editing, so he still has to do some of this. But he's taking a break, not doing 100% well. So there's that. And speaking of which, that is this today's brief topic is going to be a little bit about coronavirus. So before we go into this, a brief explanation of that. It's not named after beer. It's named because of the shape of the virus. Makes it look like it has a little crown, which is what corona means. A lot of viruses, a lot of things are named after their morphology. So that's how that comes about. So we're gonna do a quick little rundown. Really quickly. I said that twice now. That's very redundant. Apologize for that. Okay, so first off, some pretty common misconceptions about coronavirus. It's just a cold. That is true and not true. Coronaviruses are one of the viruses that do cause colds, including rhinoviruses. Rhinoviruses are more frequently the cause of colds in the United States. That information may vary outside of the U.S. I don't have that. I know in the U.S. most colds are caused by rhinoviruses. Most cold viruses, rhinoviruses specifically, you get a cold every time you encounter a new one. They mutate fairly quickly, so you're frequently encountering new ones, but they're not often all that bad. Rhinoviruses, unlike coronaviruses, named after what they look like, rhinoviruses. Anyway, I kind of got off on a tangent, and I'm coming back where I was supposed to be. It's just a cold. It is a cold virus. It's not just a cold. It does have a higher mortality rate than other colds do. Data is going to vary depending on who's done the research and the pool that they're looking at. So please keep in mind when you're looking at research regarding anything, but also this, because this is what we're talking about, your numbers are never going to be exactly the same because you have variables that is different for each data pool. But as long as the numbers are similar, you can be sure that they're pretty accurate. So say if the research out of China is indicating that you've got a mortality rate of 27% in people over the age of 85, which, by the way, they do, and the research out of the U.S. is saying that it's 25% or 24%, you can rest assured that while we don't know exactly what it's at, it's going to be between those numbers. So, on that note, as of the 18th, information from the CDC indicates that the mortality rate for those over 85 who are infected is about 27%. To break that down, that means 1 out of 4 people over the age of 85 who are infected will pass away from this infection or complications resulting from it. That is a really high number. That's devastatingly high. It's one of the reasons why a lot of places are quarantining. Because vulnerable populations, those who are older, those who are immune compromised, this virus is very deadly for them. People between 65 and 84, the mortality rate is currently sitting at 11%. That's 1 out of 10. Not as bad as those over 85, but still pretty bad. It's bad. Let's see. Next one, it's a zoonotic disease. I've heard this a lot. I've heard of people convincing their loved ones to take their pets to the shelter and drop them off because their pets will give it to them and stuff like that. And that is not the case. Yes, coronavirus, this variety, Covid19, is a disease that mutated in animals to the best of our knowledge. But that is what viruses do. And they don't just do it in animals, they do it to other people. Humans transmit infections to animals, those viruses mutate in those animals, and then we catch them again as a new virus. humans give a virus to other groups of humans, it mutates, we catch it again. This is what they do. It's nothing specific to pets, and it's nothing that getting rid of a pet is going to prevent. Because by the virus's nature, it is going to mutate in its host when it mutates regardless. But I especially want to address this. Dogs don't get this coronavirus to the best of our knowledge. There is a variety of coronavirus that does affect dogs. It causes an intestinal infection in them, and usually they recover with no problem. The virus that dogs get, the coronavirus, now remember it's a family of viruses, there's a bunch of them. The coronavirus that is a problem for dogs is not an issue for humans. And yes, dogs can get a variety. This is not that variety. You do not need to take your animals to the shelter. And while we don't know for sure, I personally would advise against that, because especially if you are somebody who is isolating themselves at home to help reduce your potential for transmission and catching it, having a companion animal is going to make that easier on you. You want to have your friends around. Have your friends around, especially if they're fuzzy and they're cuddly. You are not going to hurt them. They are not going to hurt you. On that note, people got it from eating bats. I heard that rumor. As of this filming, I wasn't able to confirm that. I do know, though, there's issues with disease transmission in wild game, regardless of where you're at. Whatever country you're in, there's always going to be issues. The potential for infection. Here in the United States, there's parasites that live in black-tailed deer. There's the potential for chronic wasting disease in elk, and I think also deer. Also, there are always going to be issues. Those potentials are actually pretty small, and as long as you do things safely, everything should be fine. While I personally do not think people should eat bats at all, because I think bats are adorable, and I think that eating sky puppies is a horrible thing, and I don't know why you would do that, I haven't been able to confirm that is where this particular strain came from. Let's see, what's our last one? Okay. Hoarding behavior has resulted in supply chain kinks for some areas. There are not necessarily shortages. The supply that's being manufactured should be able to meet normal demand. The issues with a lot of places is that demand is not normal. Once people stop hoarding, this should no longer be an issue, with some exceptions. Supply chains have been disrupted in pretty significant ways for some things manufactured out of areas that are currently in quarantine. This has affected healthcare providers. For that reason, is part of the reason why people are being advised to distance care if possible. Because healthcare providers don't have the availability of the PPE that they would, that's the personal protective equipment, that they would normally have available to be treating a lot of people. Basically, if you just have allergies, and I don't want to say just have allergies, because let's be fair, allergies can be really, really bad. In fact, some allergies can be deadly. So I'm talking like seasonal allergies, like you're stuffed up and whatever. If you can see your provider do a distance visit, please do so. We do need to restrict the number of people who are using healthcare services just because we can't get the supplies in. Gloves is a huge thing. People I've talked to, my facility, people I've talked to at other facilities, we don't have gloves. We need them. You know, you're expected to change your gloves between every patient. I myself have always changed my gloves. When I worked in a laboratory, I considered literally everything from the moment I walked through the door to be potentially disgusting, so I used my gloves when I touched almost everything, including my computer and my phone. But I changed them frequently. In my opinion, that's safest. A lot of people feel that way also, but we just don't have the supplies to do that now. On that note, if you are ill, please, yes, do go see the providers, especially if you're having respiratory symptoms. Do go get the supportive care that you need. Your provider will evaluate you, and if they think that you are good to be treated at home, then, unless you have reason to believe otherwise, trust their decision. But back to the hoarding. Don't be that guy who goes out and buys an entire basket full of meat so that the store sells out, so that you can then walk around selling it at 3 times the price to your neighbors. That's being a dick. Man, everybody's worried about, where they're going to get food, and you're buying all of it, which is exacerbating that worry, and then you're exploiting people who sometimes have been laid off. That's don't do that. You're a bad person. Don't do that. I bring that up because we have had an issue with that in some areas. People deliberately buying stock out, knowing that there are food insecurities because of what's going on, knowing that people are having some minor supply issues, and they're exploiting that for their benefit. We are all in this together, and we need to take care of each other. And exploiting people, that's not taking care of each other. To carry on the thread from earlier, there have been a few reports of children who have been infected with the virus. At the time that the first two came out, they weren't sure whether or not this virus could be transmitted from mother to baby. And it's looking like it can be. There has been a case of a baby who was tested shortly after birth, and the baby tested positive. Now, what that means is, had the baby been infected right after birth, the baby would not have begun to produce... the antigens would not have built up enough to have been detected. So that is indicating that the baby was infected prior to birth. It is not looking like there is a concern for most healthy babies. That is still an unknown, but it is looking like that is good. If you have children that you're concerned about, immune-compromised babies, preemies, yes, please isolate them. Now, one of the main reasons why people are talking about isolating children isn't because children are at high risk, but because a lot of children appear to be carriers. They're not at high risk from the virus itself, but they are carriers of the virus, and they can infect others who are more vulnerable to it. I told my husband that we should take the toddler and use him as a magic wand to separate the crowds in the grocery store, since everybody was afraid of the babies and the virus. I'm told that that's not acceptable. We can't use the baby as a people barrier, but still holding out. Yeah, we might be able to work that into our daily shopping routine. Let's see, I think I've covered some of the major myths that we've got going on. CDC recommendations. A lot of places are screening now, especially healthcare places. They're taking your temperature, they're asking you some screening questions. 100.4 is the fever limit. As always, there are always exceptions. There are always the people who are sick and weren't running a fever. But that's really rare. And sometimes it's not that they weren't running a fever, it's that they didn't measure it at the time that they were running the fever. That was just a little bit disjointed, sorry. We're getting ready to sign off here. I had one more that I wanted to just touch bases with you before, I do my wash your hands, don't touch your face, which I'm going to do, even though I just said it. I'm going to do it again. There is There's been a lot of internet movement around a particular rumor around coronavirus. There's a research paper often tacked onto it, and the rumor is people who get the flu shot are susceptible to coronavirus. That is not true. There is a research paper attached to it, and at first glance that would look like that is what the research says. What the research, or what the people perpetuating this myth don't take into account, is that the majority of the people to whom the flu virus is first given are people who are more at risk from respiratory illnesses. People who are in high-risk groups for whom getting a respiratory illness would be deadly are the first line to be given the flu vaccine. And that pool of people are most at risk from coronavirus. So this is a classic example of correlation does not equal causation. Just because you get the flu vaccine does not mean you are going to be at risk for coronavirus. What it means is if you are already at risk from the flu, you are also at risk from coronavirus. That's just another example of, when somebody throws a research paper at you, always read it, the whole thing, not just the abstract. Read and always look behind the motivations of the person who is giving you that information. 9 times out of 10, they're selling you something, and it's probably zinc supplements. So I'm going to close off. Wash your hands. Don't touch your face, although I know you're going to, because we all do. Nothing hammers home how much humans enjoy touching their faces, like being told not to do it. So anyways, everybody, as Will would say, stay safe out there. Did I do that right? We'll catch you guys next time.